Welcome all guests, welcome all new faces. I want to introduce to you our special guest, William McNeely of Do Greater Charlotte, and George Lynch, former NCAA champion at UNC and longtime NBA player. George is also working with the HBCUs. And I felt that this month being Black History Month, it'd be really important to get a couple of people of color that know that side of the world better than I do and better than a lot of us do. And what I like to do is bring people together, bring a community together, have real raw conversations in a respectful manner so we can all learn and grow. George, welcome to the show, and William, welcome to the show. George, I have you muted, so if you can become unmuted, that'd be great. Just give us a little bit. William, you go first, then George, give me 30 seconds on what you do and where you're from, your background. Go ahead, William.
Cool. Good morning, everybody. As Matt said, my name is William McNeely. I am a native Charlottean. Grew up here in Charlotte. I'm a former Apple executive, focused on higher education and K-12 marketing for the company. Recently, within the last 5 years, I've started a nonprofit organization called Do Greater Charlotte. And our mission is to expose kids in under-resourced communities to technology, design, entrepreneurship, creative technologies that allow them to build their creative confidence. We do this through a mobile technology lab that we take out into communities, and we just opened an 8,000 square foot innovation lab off West Moorhead to provide our programs in. So thanks for welcoming me.
Yeah, sure, of course. George.
Hello, everyone. It's George Lynch here. Like Coach said, former NBA player, graduate of UNC Chapel Hill, NCAA champion. I moved to Charlotte. I've been here 3 years, back in the Charlotte area for 3 years now. My kids are at Myers Park. And I currently on the broadcast for Valley Sports for the Charlotte Hornets. And I started a nonprofit, HBCU Heroes, about 5 years ago when I was coaching at Clark Atlanta. Coach Doherty can tell you that we both had opportunity to play for a great man in Dean Smith. Went to Chapel Hill, had all the resources we need to be a student athlete in the classroom and on the basketball court. And my opportunity to becoming a coach at an HBCU, I saw that a lot of the student athletes didn't have the same opportunities, although we were asking them to of the same requirements as a student athlete at any Division I school.
George, thank you. Thank you so much. Your backgrounds are going to really enlighten a lot of us on the show. What do you see? And I'll go with William first. William's the point guard. George is 6'8". George, I won't discuss your weight now, but you look like you could still play. William's the point guard from NC State, so let's not hold that against him. Brother, ironically, it was the cheerleader on the 1982 national championship team, and I have a picture of Dean Smith cutting down the nets, and in the background is his brother, who is now the president of AT&T. So the world continues to get smaller and smaller. What's the biggest? You have an audience here. You have an audience largely of white men. We have some females. Sarah, thank you for being on. Teresa, and a few others. Tell us what we should know. Tell us what you want us to know about the underserved community, the Black community. Tell us something that we need to know.
Well, I think I would start off looking at my experiences in Charlotte here, growing up on the west side of Charlotte in an underserved and under-resourced resource community myself. I mean, I grew up in a family where single mother raising 4 kids on the west side of Charlotte. And one of the things I talk about is with my siblings is, you know, what did it take for us to kind of see opportunities to expand our vision, expand our horizon, expand the types of things we could do and become. And quite frankly, one of the things that happened to us was this opportunity that that we saw the things that we could do and become. My mom did a great job of even though we didn't have much, she exposed us to the types of things that that we could do and become, whether that's an engineer or an attorney or those things that we didn't normally see within our communities at the time. We had this opportunity to be able to become exposed to that as I grew up in Charlotte in the late 70s, early 80s, when there was busing, forced busing in the Charlotte community. And so I was living on the west side of Charlotte, was bused to Carmel Middle School and South Meg High School, which was literally a place that I didn't even know existed. And so for me, what the opportunity was, is, you know, we got into the environments and we said, you know what? One, we saw things that we never saw, but the one thing I think the light bulb went off for us was that we could do those things and we could compete in that type of environment. And so when we were exposed and got that type of access and started to build that type of social capital, then we knew there were some opportunities for us to do great things. And so that's when we started to excel and take advantage of the things that that were out there. And so for me today, as I started this Do Greater Charlotte, this nonprofit organization, it was about how can we provide that same type of opportunity to increase that social capital with our kids who might not normally have access to that. And so we surround our kids in these communities with folks who are doing great things in the community. And, you know, obviously folks that are on this call, that our kids now start to see that, you know what, I can build the confidence within myself and my ideas matter. And I can now want to attain these type of opportunities as well. And so I think that's what I would say is, you know, how can we continue to provide exposure and access to technology, to careers, to opportunities. I mean, I think there are many, many reports that have been done within the Charlotte community. 10 years ago, we were rated as 50 out of 50 for upward mobility. So basically, based on what zip code you live in, it determines your success. Charlotte rated 50 out of 50 of the largest metropolitan areas in the city for upward mobility. Well, what does that mean? That means that we're not crossing communities. We don't grow up and being exposed to things that happen in other zip codes. Yeah. And so for us is that how can we facilitate that? How can we now take kids who are growing up in our neighborhoods that might not, that might be the first to go to college in their entire family? How can we now start to match and connect those with college graduates who they might not get a chance to talk to a lot? And so
I'm going to interrupt, William. What I hear as I wrote down access, and I wrote down champion. And what I mean by champion, you had your mother's support. And I think that led to that you got exposed, you had access, it gave you hope, but you had support. And I see in a lot of, in some communities, people don't want others to succeed and achieve because it makes them look bad. Is that a real thing, George, in some of the underserved communities where, I've heard it called the crab bucket syndrome, where someone tries to do better, get out of a community through education and opportunity, but they keep getting pulled down. Is that, George, is that a real thing? And if so, how do you combat that?
I think it is a real thing, especially, a lot of times in the Black community, we call that the Black tax. You feel like you're always getting pulled back. But a lot of it, like William said, is a lot of people aren't educated or they don't have the same opportunities. And, when I look back at my experiences, it was the same thing. I had the opportunity. I was lucky enough. I had a gift. Someone saw that in me, whether it was my mom, my uncles, my Sandlot football coach, my grassroots basketball coaches, and I was able to stay in that nurturing environment where someone showed interest. And I think when we go into these communities, and also in the white communities, I'm over at Movement School here in Charlotte on the west side, and we bring kids from the south side to the west side, and we find out that a lot of those families on the south side, their fathers are working. They work corporate jobs. They're not available. They can't teach the kids. They don't get the chance to go out and shoot hoops with the kids. They don't go get opportunity to go to their Sandlot baseball games, and they have the same challenges. And I think when you have a group of champions, as in coaches or mentors, can get, especially young men and women, and show them, the love, the encouragement that they're lacking in their homes, we're able to build better communities.
Yeah. Let's fast forward. And that, I never heard that term black tax, by the way, George. I don't want to overlook that. I see some smiles from Dalen and Dozie as I mentioned that term. It obviously hits home. That is, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I'm not looking for a show of hands, but I've grown up and played ball and been around a lot of African Americans. First time I heard the term black tax. Tell me more about what black tax means and help everyone else on this webcast understand it.
For me, the experience of black tax, going to the University of North Carolina, and then going back into my hometown in Roanoke, Virginia, and feeling the pressure of, I have to lift the entire community. I have to always come back and give back. Becoming a professional athlete, feeling the pressure of supporting not just my immediate family, but my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, and the one thing that you have to learn, that education is important. If I didn't have an opportunity to graduate from high school and graduate from college and have an opportunity to go play at the University of North Carolina, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to play in the NBA, and to be able to be in a situation to come back, whether I give my time, my finances, my, relationships, you're always feeling like you're not doing enough.
Wow.
And even, with immediate family, sisters, and, I have 3 sisters, and to go home sometimes to see my 3 sisters and not seeing them do as well, sometimes I feel guilty. And it's hard for me to, it's hard for me to stay in that environment. So, I find myself instead of being 30 minutes from my hometown, I'm 3 hours from my hometown.
Right. Yeah, that's really insightful. Dozie, you nodded your head. You relate to that. Speak to us, Dozie. What does black tax mean to you, and how do you overcome that?
Thank you, Coach. Good morning, everybody. And look, what George is saying is right on point. And what you have is this dynamic in communities of people of color. And then you have the opposite, as George explained, where people of working or higher affluent classes, you end up with these situations where went through similar thing like George. After being away for so long overseas, you come back home and then you see you're getting reacquainted with people you haven't seen since high school, but everybody is coming towards you, you see? And it's that big ask all the time.
Mhm.
They're coming, but usually it's with an ask. And George is correct. You have families people from everything, and children, aunts, uncles, and then you end up with people who are close to you. They end up profiting because they're making backdoor deals just by being in the environment.
Wow.
They're
Wow.
profiting of you
Wow.
without even telling you. We have lived this completely, and it's exactly as George said.
Wow.
You come home to rekindle relationships, but then you realize, because we call it what he called black tax, we call crab in the barrel syndrome.
Yeah, that's what I touched on earlier, the crab in the barrel.
And the former headmaster at our high school, his best friend got a job as a vice president of the NFL. And he just shared with us this fall that vice president said he didn't believe all the black tax or crab in the barrel that goes on with these NFL players. And he was just shocked and astonished because everybody is coming and asking. And it's more of, as he put it, the way they approach it is, you owe us.
Yeah.
Because it took the community to build you.
Wow. How do you wow, they could go a lot of different ways. How do we help overcome that culture? You know, there's culture everywhere. I'm gonna pick on David Cooks. David, welcome, man. It's so see you show up on this brings a smile to my face. Been a long time. You've been around youth basketball since I started coaching at Davidson. And thank you for being on. First time guest, first time visitor to the Rebound Live webcast. Talk to us. Tell me what's going through your mind, and how can the Black community overcome that if they can, and how can the white community support it?
Well, first of all, thank you for acknowledging me. I was just trying to sit in the background. Of course, you pulled me right up front.
Oh, you're not going to sit in the background. You never did, man. You never did.
That's funny. Yeah, you know, I concur with everything that everyone has said. And I think, you know, that what I've done, because I've got two groups of people that I have to work with. I'm in a wheelchair and I'm an African-American. So one of the things I just
repeat that. I don't know if everyone heard what you said, that you're in a wheelchair.
Yes, I'm in a wheelchair. Been in a wheelchair for over 4 decades now. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've learned is not to try to eat the whole pie. It becomes a little bit too overwhelming if I do that. And what I mean by that is this. I try to find someone in my circle that I can help, that will receive what I will do, and try to bring them along. When I became a head coach in high school, I always wanted to make sure I brought somebody with me, whether I'm doing investing or speaking or whatever. I always try to reach back and pull somebody. I know I can't pull everybody. Everybody's not going to be able to fit in my wagon.
Yeah,
I had to sit with that and get comfortable with not having that impact who I am, and not having it impact my self-esteem and my own personal self-worth. I had to find another way to make sure that I was appreciating myself the way I needed to. And so I know I don't discard anyone. I just receive those who will come. And that's how I spend my time. Otherwise, it's just not fruitful for me. And the frustration level, because you can never answer that question. You can never get to why you got the crab in the barrel thing. That's been going on for as long as and I don't know when that will be answered. But my answer is to try to just get one of them. And if I can impact one, then you know how it goes. One impacts another, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of what's been my approach to that.
Well, I love that term, don't eat the whole pie. I wish you gave me that advice about 20 years ago. I wouldn't be 260 right now. But that's great wisdom, David. All right, let's fast forward. Current day, business and sports, and that's why I have you two here. William, former Apple executive, George Lynch, played in the NBA, coached college level, been around the game for a long time. Are you pleased with where things are in the light of Dave Tepper? Carolina Panthers had a Black interim head coach from Charlotte, North Carolina, Steve Wilkes, who did a hell of a job. And he gets bypassed for a white head coach. How does that make you feel, William, and what goes through your mind when you read that?
For me, it's when experiencing that process and understanding and being in the city and seeing the great job that Steve Wilkes has done or had done during last year. You try to kind of take a step back and look at it from the organizational standpoint. I see, for me, looking at 3 to 5 years down the road, who's going to be the best fit to take us to where we need to go. In my mind, it's Steve Wilkes. I mean, it's looking at this environment that he built as a leader of men, an environment that he could get a entire 80-man, I can't remember the number, but 80-man roster to kind of come together in a sense of adversity, in an opportunity, in a time of adversity to meet a goal that other coaches couldn't do. And so for me, it was proof that could be done, and someone who had done it did not get hired. And so what I see is that happening over and over again of individuals from an African-American standpoint who have to go way beyond the norm to get an opportunity. Just today, my daughter is, yesterday, my daughter is a manager, or just was promoted to manager in an environment, and I won't tell what the company is, and it's in Charlotte, but she was just promoted and did not receive the compensation that the other manager who was promoted had received in that particular job, who had been doing that. She was doing that job for 8 months now, and then was promoted into that job. So I obviously proved that she can do it, but was not given that compensation. So I do think that still there's some ways for us to go to look at the talents that are out there, and then to accept those talents based on the experiences and the results that are being produced. So I love Frank Wright. I followed him all the way through. I mean, one of the greatest comebacks ever for Buffalo. I literally use that sometimes in my conversations. But I do think that opportunity for Steve Wilkes should have been given him the opportunity because he approved it. So I see that happen over and over in certain situations. So I hope that.
Thank you. George, the Rooney Rule. The Rooney Rule in the NFL is named after the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it goes something like this, that when there's a head coaching opening, they have to interview at least one minority. I believe that's the rule.
Is too.
Is it working or is it not?
I think I want to go back. I think for us to have this conversation with the group of people that we're on, we need to have more of these conversations. There need to be workshops. There needs to be, and then when you build, sports is a great opportunity to build teams, cultures. Coach Doherty, like Coach Smith said, he always wanted he didn't want a team full of New York guys or a team full of Virginia guys or a team full of North Carolina guys. He wanted a team with people from different backgrounds, social, economic, the gamut. And in our locker room, I think was the perfect place to have conversations, to know someone from New York, how they live, someone from the South, someone from Germany, Holland, Dutch. We had everything. And I think that until we can have conversations and not feel like we're overstepping bounds or making someone feel uncomfortable, the Mooney rule won't matter. Coach Wright might be the perfect guy for the Panthers job, but Coach Wilkes was also a great guy. But until, Tapper is comfortable with Black men in the room at leadership, those things won't change. And it's just he may not have grown up, in a sports environment. He was lucky enough to come across the, economics to buy a team. His team, 80, 90% African Americans. And, we're just now seeing 2 Black quarterbacks in the NFL. And I remember coming up as a kid, watching Randall Cunningham, Doug Williams, playing sandlot football. It was always a white quarterback. Right. So until we're able to have those conversations, whether it's in the board, a high school gym, little league basketball, and people can feel comfortable in their own skin and have that conversation, we still got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, no, George, thank you. Tepper said, I want to break up the old boys network. And he had the opportunity to. Now, again, there's a lot more that goes into it. Who is the right fit, regardless of race. But as you stated, playing basketball at an early age, being in the locker room, being in the car, staying at someone's house, to me, it doesn't come down to race. It comes down to values. Does your family value hard work? Do they value decency? Do they respect each other? Do they follow the Lord? And then, okay, I don't care what color you are, as long as we share similar values, goals, dreams, and respect each other's diversity. Danny Dolan's on this. Danny and I were in high school together. My first 2 years, our high school was pretty much white. And then the last 2 years, it became a significant number of African Americans. My team went from all white my first 2 years to my last year. I think we were like out of 12 players, 6-6. And, when we get together, man, all that stuff is out. It's the locker room. And that's what I wanted to create here, an environment where we can talk real talk about tough conversations. And when we get off the call, we do it in a respectful manner and say, man, that was enlightening. I learned something. I never heard of the black tax before. I never heard of the crab in the barrel. And make our respective communities better as a result. What are the biggest, I know Brian's got his hand up, but I'll let him keep his hand up for a while. What are the biggest misconceptions that you feel white people have of the African-American community that we need to know, like, that's not real, and we can take that barrier down? Like you said, Tepper may not have grown up around any African Americans. What do you want the white community to know about the black community that can help us reach closer together?
I think I'll take this one first. That African Americans, we're sensitive. We are afraid just like any other race when we're walking down the street. We're a very proudful race of people. You know, we would rather try and do it ourselves before we ask for help. So when you see someone of color asking for help, they really need it. And you know, and it's very hard for us because, you know, just like for men, for Black men, we're told don't cry at home, don't be a girl, don't be a sissy, you know, whatever terms, you know, our uncles, but it's all a facade, or it was a facade. You had to grow up being tough because if you show vulnerability in the neighborhood, someone would take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I would like to share.
Yeah. How about that? 6'9", whatever, played the NBA for 17 years, and you're talking about being sensitive, afraid, you know, you have pride, you're afraid to ask for help, and you're told don't cry. That goes back to what Brian Moran said about a year ago, and I've used it now enough that it's my own. Vulnerability is the new invincibility. Like everybody on this call, George, just leaned into your comments. That's powerful. William, same question to you that George just answered. What do we need to know as a white community about the Black community that can help bring us to closer together?
You know, a couple of things. I think you have to understand. You have to understand history and where we've come from. That's extremely important with, you know, how we interact with different in different situations. And so, you know, most of the time we look at, you know, it's very, very uncomfortable to talk about slavery. You know, but when I look at, I mean, I'm 58 years old, and I can remember, I'm not that, you know, a couple of generations back where, you know, great grandmother, you know, was a sharecropper. And then me growing up and being sent to South Carolina for the summer and having to, you know, as they are sharecropping, having to go to the house or the home was that they were working on and to get things and being told not to go to the front door and things like that. So I think one of the things you have to realize is that we do as a community continue to carry some of that burden and those scars. It's not gone. And so even in my generation, I can again remember things like that. So I think you have to be cognizant of that as well, and how we have grown you know, in today's society, but still carry some of that baggage. Secondly, I think you have to also understand that we are not a homogeneous type of ethnicity. I mean, we're all different. There's a diversity of gifts within the Black community, and so we think different. We operate different. We come from different communities. And so you know, you have to, you know, again, understand that we are just like any other ethnicity with values and how we approach things. And so you know, look at us as individuals, just as you would any other group.
Yeah. And the only way to do that is to come together and create communities where they're diverse. Because George touched on it, we're all fearful. I mean, you know, you go think of walking, you know, I've lived in New York City for a while, and you see somebody coming on a street that's, you know, not well lit, and you cross the street so you don't have to pass them on the sidewalk. That's a real fear. And so how can we come together in a community so we can get the, you know, for those of you who don't know, I'm in William's office right now in his facility, and he and I came together. I was hosting an event. I was a panelist. He was there. I made the comment about his shoes. He had some nice Adidas on, I believe. And we started talking, and then like, what do you do? What do you do? And all of a sudden, boom. And now we've formed a friendship. and are doing some things together. And I'm just really, and then, turns out his brother was in school with me and was a cheerleader, and he's the president of AT&T. And they came from the west side of Charlotte with a single mom who worked her tail off to provide opportunities for you all. Brian Moran.
Thank you, Matt. There's so much to cover here, but I'll try and be focused on the last things that you talked about. One of the difficulties that, and I think it was William who brought it up when we talked about the hiring of the Carolina football coach. It's now Frank Reich, I believe. The problem is Tepper has an unconscious bias that he probably hasn't answered yet. But when you start to put kind of limitations on the people you're hiring, like the Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, when President Biden said, I'm going to nominate the best Black woman for the position, what happens is you put an asterisk on it, and that really is a burden on her, because people then can say, oh, well, she wasn't the best candidate. She was the best Black female candidate for the position. And I think what we need to do is we need to step away from that and say, I'm going to hire the best person for the job, understanding that diversity is a competitive advantage in business. Somehow we don't realize that. If you have a group of white men sitting in a room, your degree of view is probably about 90 degrees. That's what you see in terms of your market, your competition, and the landscape. You need people in that room who look differently, think differently, come from different places, so that you can get a 360-degree view. Now, in business for years, in banking, there was this program, corporate social responsibility, and I think it went to other corporations. And basically what it said was, and it's the Community Reinvestment Act in banking, right? Where they say, if you take deposits from an underserved community, 35% of those deposits need to go back into the community. And it's kind of forced. Well, it was Michael Porter from Harvard who came up with CSV, creating shared value. Instead of saying, okay, you need to give this money back because you took it from them, how about we create a win-win situation where everybody wins, where we create opportunities? And that's really what I think, to George's point, when you talk about that black tax, you go back home and everybody expects a pound of flesh from you, whether it's money or connections or something like that. Really, what successful people should be bringing back to the community is opportunities. All right, let's create a win-win. George said, I'd bring people along with me, it was Dozie, I think, who said, I bring people along with me to give them opportunities. That's really the best thing that we can bring. And I'll make one other comment. I had a friend of mine who has been on the Rebound Live before, Jill Johnson, who talks about, she runs a group called IFO, Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership, which is based in Newark. She helps a lot of women of color business owners. And she said, Brian, what would really help us is if you bring us along to those country club conversations that you have. And I laughed and I said, Jill, I got news for you. I'm not getting invited to those country club conversations, but I've been around for a long time. I know a thing or two, and I'm willing to come to where you are and have these conversations, and I will bring you to wherever I'm going to have those conversations, because it's a win-win for you and for me.
Yeah. So, Brian, that's great stuff. And it leads into a question that Chuck Cooper put into the chat. And Chuck, thank you for being a longtime member of the Rebound Live webcast. And this is a question for George and William and others, people of color on the call. How do we bring these communities together? How do we do that? Where can we come together? Because, we all just kind of morph by default to our neighborhoods. So, William, how do we kind of force in a comfortable way engagement to create community of diversity?
I mean, you have to, it has to be intentional. On the other end, from our perspective as an African-American male, I have to be intentional about where I place myself inside certain communities. I have to do that. I have to look at my calendar. I have to be, as running a nonprofit, most of my funding, I would say 90% of my funding comes from the corporate and white community. And so I have to intentionally place myself inside these environments where I could be the only African-American there, talking about who I am, what I do, where I come from. So on the other side, that's the same type of opportunity that I think the white community has to do. You have to be intentional about placing yourself inside communities of color where you start to learn and understand and see. Now, this doesn't have to be, really foreign where you just walk into an environment. There are opportunities where, that you have, these interests of support and things like that, where you now say, hey, let me come inside and learn and understand, about how I can learn and be involved and help as well. So, it has to be an intentional opportunity where where you insert yourself in these communities, whether there is African-American friends that you might have and say, hey, how can I get to understand and know you better? But I do think there's a conscious effort of including yourself inside communities of color.
Thank you, George. And then we'll go to Dozie.
Yes, William hit it on. Just be intentional. If you in a situation like Coach Doherty said, a lot of us get in our comfort zones. We live in the communities where it's safe for our kids, but it doesn't have much diversity. I'm living in the Cotswold area, and I don't see much diversity. But I decided I wanted my kids to go to Morris Park. I wanted to be close to a certain area, and so I find myself taking my kids over to the West Side for workouts, to be around kids that look like them. And, you just have to be intentional about it. Just be aware and just try to see where you can help and serve.
Thank you. Dozie.
Awesome. Real simple and quick. Just from the experiences, and if could take what was said by each person about this, sports. It's the only thing that have seen around the globe that brings people together.
Yeah.
You can create events around sports, and then we can have these conversations. That's the way that we see, because it's the only place. Even told someone, have played around the world with people who were racist, teammates, everything. It's the only thing that transcends all of that. And the coaches are the ones who control it. That's the key. The coaches know, but they control that environment. And when you have those real serious top level coaches, they do not tolerate any of that. It's all about the discipline. That's all.
So it goes back to me, and I preach about every organization. I call it the organizational triangle, is made up of talent, systems, and culture, where culture is king. And it's up to the organization, sports team, Apple, Bank of America, NFL, to create a culture that's driven by values. And those values, like respect, trust, commitment, positivity, which are the values that I use, RTCP, that has no color barrier. That respect each other, trust. If you're consistent with that respect in your communication, you will have trust. Committed to knowing each other, committed to doing your best, committed to getting better every day, and do it in a positive manner. That transcends race. And those are things that I learned from Coach Smith, as George did. George could recite Coach Smith's core values as I could right now, and it's play hard, play smart, and play together. And I had to pass the ball to you know, I don't care if it's white or black. You know, I'm passing the ball to the open man. And we ate together, and we all wore jackets and ties, and we all had to be on time. We, you know, and he disciplined Michael Jordan one time for showing up 10 seconds late for practice. Put a weighted vest on him and had him run steps. And Michael then said, and he forgot about me. Didn't matter. Marlene, coming from the Netherlands. So you're in a different part of the world. Drop some knowledge on us.
Well, I don't have all the knowledge. There is not always a good diversity here. It used to be better, I think, or it's more open now, more discussed. Maybe it's good to know that my kids have a biracial background, and therefore I see in my kids more how Black people are treated. I'm more aware that they're not treated as equal as I thought they were before I had my kids. And I played North Carolina basketball when I was a student, and that was for me was the first time to play in a mixed team with Black American girls and white American girls. And of course, as you say, you know, you wear the same uniform, you wear the same clothes when you go on the bus to a game, you eat the same meals, but after practice and after the games, there were two different worlds. And I really tried and wanted to also to be part of the world of my Black teammates. But then that I also felt then uncomfortable because I would be the only white in the group. People would treat me differently because I was a white girl hanging out with Black people. That I found that very difficult. So then it becomes very hard to be really a part of this other community and to understand each other. I went to homecoming 4 years ago, and I really tried to meet up with my Black teammates, and I couldn't find them because they were with their other Black sororities and fraternities. And I felt kind of, well, hesitant in going there and being part of it because that was their community. So I find that very tough, and I really want to be part of it, and they do respect me and I respect them, but it's still, there's a difficulty in really becoming part of each other's lives.
William or George or anybody else, David Cooks, John Mitchell hadn't said anything, Foster with his SMU pony up shirt. How do you respond to, I mean, I just love Marlene's honesty. I mean, that's what we want, right? We want that. And I have a response, you know, and I'm sure everyone else does, but I'd love to hear William, George, someone of color to mention this. Now we've got 7 minutes left, so let's just be conscious of time.
I mean, I can start off. I think, you know, when African Americans get in an environment that we're with, you know, we're all about community, and so we have been used, especially ones, you know, of us who have been in different environments where we're always looking for the, you know, the common. I can go into a corporate meeting or an environment, and I'm looking for comfort. I'm looking for the African American in the room to say, okay, there's somebody who understands. And so it's flipped a little bit when you're in an environment where it's a team of African Americans, or it's a Greek, like you mentioned, the fraternity and sorority, which I'm in a fraternity as well. It's just that same flip. It's that same feeling that you have, or that we have when we go into an environment where we have to look for that commonality. And so I understand where you're coming from. I mean, on the other side, we experience that almost every day as well. So it is a difficult situation where you're in an environment sometimes where you feel comfortable, and then when this group gets into like, for instance, if I'm at work, if I worked at Apple and I'm in my team and I've got this team, but then I'm outside of that team, outside of the corporate environment, and my white teammates are in another situation where I don't feel as comfortable, I feel the same way, you know, when I'm going in.
That's what I meant.
Commonality, yeah.
So that's what I meant. It made me, you know, realize that Black Americans feel like that all the time.
All the time.
For me, it
All
would
the
be
time.
a choice. to go
Yeah.
there and I would feel uncomfortable, but I can go anywhere and feel comfortable. But for you guys,
It's all the
anywhere
time.
you go, you have that every time. You have to look for someone, you know, and bond and see if there's two, it's easier than one. So it
Right.
made me, it was not a complaint. It was more that it made me realize how difficult it is and that I don't experience that at all.
Right. No, so what can one do when you notice, this is the emotional intelligence part, and the awareness is, okay, I'm a white guy. Well, I'm with other white guys. We're out socially or, you know, after work, and here comes a black coworker. Include them. Make them feel comfortable without being stupid. Right? I mean, I'm not, you know, like I'm not gonna all of a sudden shuck and jive and try to be black just to make a black guy be comfortable with a group of white guys. Now, having played ball, like I think that, you know, hopefully my cool factor is okay and make somebody feel comfortable. But you know, you have this, you know, just be comfortable being uncomfortable. Be comfortable with your awkwardness and just include and have, hey man, welcome, William. Glad you showed up at the, you know, this happy hour. Glad to have you. You know, what do you think about work? What do you think about politics? What do you think about Tepper hiring Frank Reich? You know, whatever, just current events, and get comfortable being uncomfortable. And it comes down to being in these environments more often and being emotionally intelligent. We've got 3 minutes, George. Your reaction maybe to Marlene's comments. How do we overcome that that type of feeling that someone may have, black or white, going into a group of the opposite race?
I think one caller said it. You know, you take it one step at a time. You know, one person at a time. You open up and you have conversations. You say, look, let's have 30 minutes, you know, a week, a month, and just have this conversation. And make sure that the group you have in the conversation isn't all men or isn't all women, isn't all black, and try to have some diversity and just find ways to openly have the conversation without stepping on someone's shine.
Right.
And that's the way you do it.
Yeah. I think the ability to laugh, humor, you know, laugh at my whiteness, you know, just laugh, like not take each other so seriously. And, you know, I just think I'm grinning about the times we had playing ball at North Carolina or playing ball at Holy Trinity High School. And I'm going to see some of my teammates this Friday at an event. And, you know, we called it the Soul Patrol, because we had like 6 guys from Roosevelt that would be coming to practice, and our school was in Hicksville. It was a couple of towns away, and they would come in and, you know, share a ride. We called the Soul Patrol. Is that racial? Is that funny? You know, and you do it good naturedly, and you become a bond. And you know, they would, after we won a championship, party at my house. And the 3 seniors, me, another white guy, Timmy Devlin, and Bo Ridley, a black guy, they slept over. And my mom fed them, you know, a late night snack and then breakfast in the morning. It comes down to your core values and respect. And to have respect, you got to get to know. And that's what this community is right here. And I've gone over a minute, and I apologize for having a delayed start. And I'll run my sprints from here to the coffee counter and back. This has been real powerful, and it's so cool to see some new faces: Gene Harris, Dozie, Dalen, Dalen, I sold my G90, by the way. I went to a pickup truck, no hard feelings. And who else that popped up that I haven't seen before? Nick Whitney, thank you for coming. John, there's John Mitchell was on here. John Mitchell, are you still on? John.
Hey, I'm here.
How you doing, man?
Doing great.
Good to have you on. You know, Jason Nelson, just a lot of new faces. Evan Elberg, who's a young up-and-coming college basketball coach at Gettysburg. Just really cool to have everybody on, and look forward to making this bigger and better next month, March 7th at 8 a.m. Last question, George, William, what's the best book a white person could read to help understand the Black culture better?
That's interesting. I would look at 1619. I mean, I think it's kind of controversial at this point, but I think it really gives a sense of understanding history, and I think that's key for me, is understanding history. Really things that we might not have been taught in school, but just understanding history, looking at documentaries, understanding the process that the African-American community has gone through.
I put you on the spot. Good. Thank you, William. George, you had a little more lead time. And then David,
I have to agree with that. I just watched that documentary, and even myself, because like you said, we weren't taught those things in school. And, luckily, because I had opportunity to play in the NBA, I now know some of the things and resources that other communities had opportunity to have access to that the Black communities didn't have access to, whether it was educational reasons or non-educational. 16, good documentary. Yes.
I could go on and on and on. We're gonna have to do this again. Guys, thank you. Thank you, William. Thank you, George. Thank you for everybody. We had 50 people, over 50 people pretty much throughout this Rebound Live webcast. Again, every month, the first Tuesday of every month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Learn and grow.